In the small and peaceful village of Nalia, a young girl named Zanil lived with dreams far bigger than the mud walls of her hut. At night, while the rest of the village slept, she would sit under the weak light of a kerosene lamp, her eyes fixed on the pages of old books. The smoke often made her cough, but she didn't care, because every word she read felt like a key opening the doors of a new world. Her father loved her dearly and quietly encouraged her. Even though money was always short, he would smile when he saw her bent over her books and say, "My daughter will be someone great one day." Those words gave Zanil strength, but there was another voice in the house, a voice that tried to crush her spirit. Her stepmother, Namsa, hated the sight of Zanil studying. To her, education was nothing more than a waste of time for a girl. "Books don't cook food," she would sneer. "Girls belong in the kitchen, not in classrooms." Zanil pretended not to hear, but deep inside, her heart ached. She often wondered why Namsa hated her dreams so much. Yet, every time doubt tried to take over, she would close her eyes and picture herself in a courtroom, standing tall in a black robe, speaking for those who had no voice. That picture gave her courage. She was only a village girl with nothing but hope and a flickering lamp, but in her heart burned a fire no one could put out, a fire called determination. The evening was calm in the village of Nalia, with the sound of crickets beginning to rise as the sun dipped low. Zanil walked the dusty path to the well, balancing a clay pot on her head. Her thoughts were already ahead of her, dreaming of the books she would open once she returned home. She imagined herself solving problems, reading stories, and preparing for the future she longed for. She didn't know that at that very moment, her world was about to change forever. Inside the hut, Namsa's eyes burned with jealousy as they landed on the pile of schoolbooks and neatly folded uniforms. To her, those pages represented rebellion, stubbornness, and a future that didn't belong to Zanil. She felt threatened by the girl's hunger for education, fearing that if Zanil rose, her own children would be overshadowed. Her bitterness boiled over. With a cruel smile, she carried the books and uniforms outside. She lit a match and threw it onto the pile. The flames leapt up quickly, the dry paper curling, turning black, then vanishing into smoke. Namsa's laughter rose above the crackling fire. When Zanil returned, she noticed the unusual glow outside the hut. First she thought someone was cooking, but as she came closer, the truth hit her like a heavy stone. The fire was not for food, it was her books. She dropped the pot of water, the clay shattering on the ground, and ran forward in shock. The smoke stung her eyes, but the pain in her chest was worse. She saw the half-burned corner of her favorite notebook collapse into ash before her very eyes. "No!" she cried, reaching toward the fire, but there was nothing left to save. The flames had swallowed everything: her school uniforms, her exercise books, the notes she had carefully written under the weak glow of a kerosene lamp. She tried to grab something, but the pages turned to dust in her fingers, slipping away with the evening breeze. Tears streamed down her face, her sobs breaking the silence of the night. Behind her, Namsa's voice cut through her pain, sharp and cold. "Do you see now? Girls don't belong in classrooms. They belong in kitchens. That's where you should stay." Her words were like a dagger, each syllable meant to pierce Zanil's heart. Zanil turned to look at her stepmother. Her lips trembled, but no words came out. All she could do was stare at the woman who had destroyed the only treasure she owned. The crackle of the flames felt like cruel laughter, mocking her pain. For a moment, she felt broken, empty, and powerless, as if her future had gone up in smoke with those burning pages. Yet, even as her tears fell into the ashes, a quiet voice rose within her heart. It whispered with strength she didn't know she had, "You can burn my books, but you cannot burn my dreams." Though Namsa had stolen her pages, she could not steal the fire in Zanil's soul. That night, in the middle of her pain, a new kind of determination was born. After the night of the burning, Zanil thought things could not get any worse. But Namsa's cruelty did not end with the fire. She wanted to crush Zanil's dreams completely. With a sly tongue and fake tears, she began whispering into her husband's ears. "Why waste money on school fees for a girl?" she said. "Girls grow up only to get married. Let her stay home and learn housework. That is her future." Zanil's father, torn between his love for his daughter and his wife's sharp words, finally gave in. One morning he told Zanil quietly, "My child, I cannot pay your school fees anymore." His eyes were heavy with regret, but his voice carried defeat. Zanil's heart shattered. It felt like the ground had slipped away beneath her feet. School was the one place where she felt alive, the only place where her dreams felt real. Now, even that was being stolen from her. But Namsa did not stop there. She began locking the door every morning to make sure Zanil could not sneak out to class. She watched her closely, treating her like a prisoner in her own home. Each time Zanil tried to slip away, she was dragged back and scolded. "Enough of this nonsense," Namsa would shout. "You are a girl. Accept your place." The days grew heavy with silence and sorrow. Zanil cried until no tears were left. At night, when everyone slept, she would press her face into her pillow to muffle the sound of her sobs. Her chest ached with helplessness, her mind replaying the image of her friends sitting in classrooms while she was locked away at home. The laughter of other children walking to school pierced her heart like knives. But slowly, something began to change inside her. The tears dried up, and in their place came a quiet strength. She realized crying would not bring her books back or open the locked door. If Namsa wanted her to give up, then the only way to fight back was to keep her dream alive, no matter how impossible it seemed. Sitting in the dim hut, staring at the ashes of her burned notebooks, Zanil whispered to herself, "If she thinks she can end my story, she doesn't know me yet." Her words were soft but powerful, a secret promise to herself. She refused to let anyone decide her future. From that day, Zanil stopped arguing with Namsa. She stopped begging her father. On the outside she seemed quiet and obedient, but inside her heart was on fire. She knew one thing for certain: her story was not over. Namsa could burn her books, she could lock the doors, she could even convince her father to give up on her. But she could never touch the dream burning inside Zanil's soul. And that dream was only growing stronger. Zanil refused to let her dream die. Even when the school fees stopped, even when the door was locked, her heart searched for another way. She remembered an old teacher in the village, Mr. Kato, who had once encouraged her when she was younger. One evening, when Namsa was distracted, Zanil slipped out quietly and went to his small house at the edge of the village. Her hands trembled as she knocked on the wooden door, afraid he might turn her away. Mr. Kato, gray-haired and kind, opened the door. The moment he saw Zanil's tear-stained face, he understood. "Child, why are you here at this hour?" he asked softly. With a shaking voice, she told him everything, about the fire, the ban, the locked doors, and the silence that was slowly killing her dreams. Mr. Kato's eyes grew wet as he listened. After a long pause, he nodded. "They can stop you from going to school, but they cannot stop you from learning. Knowledge belongs to anyone brave enough to chase it." From that night on, Mr. Kato secretly gave her torn, old books that other children had thrown away. The pages were stained, the covers falling apart, but to Zanil, they were treasures. She would hide them carefully under her thin mattress, waiting for everyone to fall asleep. Then, under the weak glow of the kerosene lamp, she would open them and study. Her notebooks were gone, so she tore pieces from old sacks and charcoal wrote her notes on scraps of paper. Every word she wrote felt like resistance, every lesson learned like a small victory. Namsa noticed her staying up late and accused her of wasting time. One night, when she caught Zanil scribbling on scraps of paper, her anger exploded. She beat her with a stick until Zanil's hands shook, and the marks stung for days. "Books will not feed you," she screamed. But even through the pain, Zanil's heart refused to surrender. She held on to Mr. Kato's words. Knowledge belongs to anyone brave enough to chase it. The beatings, the insults, the endless chores, nothing could stop her. If anything, each punishment only fueled her determination. Her studying became an act of rebellion, a silent fight against the chains Namsa tried to put around her. While other children studied in classrooms, Zanil studied in shadows. While others had teachers to guide them, she had only torn pages and her own stubborn will. But she kept going. Some nights she would whisper to herself, "One day, I will walk into a courtroom. One day, these scraps of paper will carry me to my dream. Her eyes would sting with tiredness, but her heart burned with hope. Zenil was no longer just a girl with books. She had become a fighter. Every secret page she read, every stolen moment of study, was proof that her spirit could not be broken. Education was no longer just a dream for her. It had become her weapon, her rebellion, her way of saying to the world, "You cannot stop me." At 16, Zenil made the hardest decision of her life. She could no longer stay in Nalia, trapped in a cage built by Nomsa's hatred. One early morning before the roosters crowed, she packed a small bag with just a few clothes and the scraps of paper she had filled with her secret notes. Her heart pounded as she stepped out of the hut, every sound in the darkness making her freeze. But she whispered to herself, "If I stay here, my dreams will die." With that, she began the long walk toward Kampala city. The journey was not easy. She had no money for transport, so she walked for hours, her bare feet blistered on the rough road. Hunger gnawed at her stomach, but she refused to turn back. Each step felt heavy, but in her mind, she carried the image of a future where she wore a lawyer's gown and spoke for the voiceless. That picture was the only thing that kept her moving. When she finally reached Kampala, the city lights blinded her. The noise, the traffic, the crowds. It was nothing like her quiet village. She felt small and lost, but she also felt a spark of hope. Here she believed no one could stop her from learning. She quickly found work as a housemaid in a wealthy family's home. The pay was little and the work was endless. Scrubbing floors, washing clothes, cooking meals, but she accepted it, because in her heart, she knew she was working for her dream. During the day, she bent over dirty laundry with aching hands. But at night, after the family went to sleep, she would sneak outside. She sat under the yellow glow of streetlights, spreading her old, torn books on her lap. The noise of the city faded as she focused on each word, each sentence. Sometimes the cold air made her shiver, sometimes her stomach growled from skipping meals, but she never stopped. To her, every page read was a small victory against the fire Nomsa once set. People often passed her on the streets, staring in surprise. Some laughed at the sight of a girl reading under a streetlight, but others admired her determination. One old man even whispered, "That girl will be someone one day." His words gave her strength on nights when exhaustion nearly broke her. Hunger, loneliness, and tiredness became her constant companions. Yet, she treated them as reminders of what she was fighting for. Whenever she felt weak, she would close her eyes and remember the ashes of her burned books. Instead of killing her dream, that fire had given her fuel. Zenil's life in Kampala was full of struggles, but she carried herself with quiet strength. She knew the road ahead was long, but she also knew something Nomsa never understood. You can destroy books, you can lock doors, but you cannot cage a burning dream. Years passed, and the little girl who once studied under a kerosene lamp and streetlights refused to give up. Zenil's hard work slowly began to open doors. After finishing her secondary school with excellent grades, she applied for a scholarship to study law at university. When the acceptance letter arrived, she held it in her trembling hands and cried until her tears soaked the paper. It wasn't just a scholarship, it was proof that her dream had survived the fire, the locked doors, the hunger, and the nights of loneliness. At university, Zenil studied with the same hunger she had carried since childhood. While others complained about long lectures, she treated every lesson as a gift. She remembered the nights she wrote notes on scraps of paper and the days she scrubbed floors just to survive. Those memories pushed her to study harder than anyone else. Soon, her professors began to notice her sharp mind and fearless spirit. "This girl," they would whisper, "is going to change the world." Zenil did not disappoint. She graduated with top honors, and before long, she became one of the youngest women in Uganda to open her own legal firm in Entebbe. The sign outside her tall glass office read, "Zenil and Partners Legal Chambers." For a moment she stood before it, her heart full of pride. She had done it. She had become the lawyer she once dreamed of while sitting under a weak lamp in her village hut. The newspapers quickly caught her story. Headlines read, "From Ashes to Advocate," and "Village Girl Who Defied the Odds Now Fights for Justice." People were amazed at how a girl who once studied under streetlights had now built a name respected across the country. But Zanil did not chase fame or applause. Her true mission was deeper. She wanted to use her scars as fuel to help other girls who had been denied an education like she once was. In her office, young girls often came to her, sharing their struggles. Parents who wanted to marry them off, families who refused to pay their fees, stepmothers who treated them as servants. Zanil would look into their tearful eyes and say gently, "I was once you. Don't give up." She began sponsoring girls' education, visiting schools, and standing in court for women who had no one to fight for them. Her name spread far beyond Entebbe. To many, she was not just a lawyer but a symbol of hope. Mothers told their daughters, "Be like Zanil." Girls whispered her name as if it were a secret prayer, a reminder that no fire, no cruelty, and no locked door could stop a determined dreamer. Zanil had risen from nothing, from ashes, from hunger, from pain. But she carried no bitterness. Instead, she turned her scars into power and her story into light. She was living proof that dreams, once planted in a determined heart, can survive anything. While Zanil's star was rising, far away in Nalyabali, Nomsa's life was slowly falling apart. The same woman who once walked with pride now found herself drowning in problems she could not control. Her children, whom she had once favored over Zanil, grew distant and selfish. They cared only for themselves and left her behind when times became hard. Debts piled up like heavy stones on her back, and the neighbors who once respected her now avoided her. Hunger became her daily companion, knocking on her door louder each day. The house that had once been full of noise and laughter grew quiet and cold. Nomsa often sat alone, staring at the walls, remembering the night she had burned Zanil's books. At the time, she thought she was winning, proving her power. But now, with her stomach empty and her children gone, she realized she had only destroyed herself. Still, pride kept her from admitting it. Finally, when she could no longer bear the emptiness, she decided to leave the village. With only a small bag of clothes, she traveled to the city, hoping she could find work to survive. Kampala was loud, crowded, and unforgiving. For days, she wandered from office to office, begging for a chance, but everywhere she went, doors closed in her face. "We have no space," people told her, turning her away. Each rejection chipped at her pride, but desperation pushed her forward. One morning, tired and weak, Nomsa joined a line of women standing outside a tall glass office building. She hoped to apply for a job as a secretary, even though she had no real skills. She waited patiently, her heart beating fast, her mind whispering prayers. Maybe this would be the chance that saved her from the misery she carried. As she looked up at the shining board above the entrance, her breath caught in her throat. The bold letters read, "Zanil and Partners Legal Chambers." For a moment the world seemed to spin. Her eyes widened, and her lips parted in shock. The name pierced through her like lightning. Could it be the same Zanil, the girl she had once mocked, beaten and tried to destroy? The girl whose books she had burned to ashes? Her knees weakened as memories came rushing back, the cruel laughter as the flames swallowed Zanil's dreams, the harsh words she had spoken, the locked doors. Now, standing outside this grand building, she felt the weight of her past crushing her chest. Nomsa's hands trembled as she clutched her bag tighter. Shame burned her from inside, but desperation kept her rooted to the spot. She whispered to herself almost in disbelief, "It cannot be. It cannot be her." Yet deep down she knew the truth. Fate had brought her here, standing at the door of the very girl she had once called useless. And soon, she would come face to face with a woman who had risen from the ashes she left behind. The morning sun glistened on the glass walls of the tall office building. Workers hurried in and out carrying files, greeting one another with respect. The air was filled with energy and purpose. Nomsa stood in the line of applicants outside the entrance, clutching her worn handbag tightly. Her dress was old and faded, her face lined with years of struggle. She tried to stand tall, but her heart pounded with fear and shame. Just then, the sound of a sleek car pulling up caught everyone's attention. A black luxury car stopped at the front steps, and the driver rushed to open the door. Out stepped a woman in a perfectly tailored navy blue suit, heels clicking against the pavement. Her posture was graceful, her face calm, her aura commanding. People around bowed their heads slightly in greeting, murmuring with respect, "Good morning, Madam Advocate." Namsa's eyes followed the woman and then froze. Her breath caught in her throat, and her knees felt weak. It was Zanil, the same girl she had once mocked, beaten, and locked inside a hut. The same girl whose books she had burned to ashes. But this was no longer the village girl with dusty feet and tear-streaked cheeks. This was a powerful woman, admired and respected, her dreams alive and shining brighter than ever. Namsa's lips trembled, her voice breaking into a whisper that only she could hear. "Zanil, my daughter." The word daughter tasted bitter and heavy on her tongue. She had denied that bond long ago, but standing here now, she could not escape it. Zanil paused at the steps, her sharp eyes scanning the crowd. For a brief second, her gaze landed on Namsa. The memories came rushing back, the flames devouring her books, the locked doors, the cruel laughter, the sting of beatings on her skin. Her heart ached, but her face remained composed. Years of pain had taught her how to hide her wounds. She stood tall, her calmness more powerful than anger. Namsa lowered her head, unable to hold Zanil's gaze. Shame burned through her. She remembered her own words, spoken with cruelty. "Girls don't belong in classrooms. They belong in kitchens." And now here was Zanil, walking into a glass office as one of the most respected lawyers in the city. The workers around whispered, curious about the old woman trembling at the gate. Some recognized the situation, others only sensed the tension. But all eyes were on the two women, the stepmother and the stepdaughter, facing each other after years of brokenness. Zanil's steps were steady as she walked past. Her silence was louder than any insult, her dignity sharper than any revenge. She did not lash out, she did not raise her voice. She only let her calm eyes speak for her, eyes that carried pain, strength, and a story of survival. For the first time in her life, Namsa realized the true weight of her cruelty. Standing at the gate of Zanil's justice, she saw the girl she tried to break, but instead, that girl had become a woman who could never be bent again. Namsa could no longer hold back. As Zanil was about to enter the office, she stumbled forward, her hands shaking, her voice breaking. "Zanil!" she cried loud enough for the whole crowd to hear. Her knees buckled as she fell to the ground, tears streaming down her wrinkled face. "Please forgive me. I was blind. I was cruel. I destroyed your dreams. Help me, Zanil. I have nothing now." The sudden scene silenced everyone around. Office workers stopped in their tracks, files clutched to their chests, eyes wide in disbelief. Secretaries peeked from the windows, security guards froze by the door. The story spread through whispers. The old woman begging on her knees was the stepmother who once burned Madam Advocate's books. Zanil stood still, her heels planted firmly on the steps. She looked down at Namsa, her heart torn between anger and pity. For years, she had dreamed of this moment, of standing tall before the woman who tried to crush her. Yet, now that it had come, she felt no joy, no triumph, only a deep ache in her chest. Namsa reached out with trembling hands, her voice desperate. "I have suffered, Zanil. My children left me. Hunger has followed me. I am nothing without your mercy. Please take me back. Forgive me. I was wrong." The crowd watched, breathless, waiting for Zanil's answer. Some expected her to walk away coldly, others thought she would shout and release all the pain locked inside her for years. But Zanil's voice came calm and steady, carrying the weight of her scars. "You burned my books," she said slowly, her words cutting through the air like blades. "But you could not burn my future. I built it with ashes." Her words rang out like thunder, echoing through the crowd. Gasps rippled among the workers. Some covered their mouths, others nodded in awe. They had never heard a response so powerful, so full of dignity. Namsa broke down completely, her sobs shaking her body. She pressed her forehead to the ground, ashamed and defeated. "Zanil, I was blind. See it now. You are greater than I ever imagined. Please don't leave me to die alone." Zanil's eyes softened, but her face remained strong. She bent slightly, her voice quiet yet firm. I am not the little girl you locked in the house. I am not the girl whose tears you mocked. I am a woman who fought for herself when no one else would. I don't carry hate, but I also don't forget. The office doors opened behind her, and her staff waited respectfully, moved by the scene. Zanil straightened her back, her presence glowing with strength. She gave Namsa one last look, not of revenge but of painful truth. Then she turned and walked inside, her words still hanging in the air. You tried to end my story, Namsa. But I wrote my own ending. Zanil could have turned her back on Namsa forever. She could have walked away and left her stepmother to face the hunger and shame she had created for herself. But Zanil was no longer the broken girl whose books were burned. She was a woman who had learned that true power was not in revenge, but in dignity. After a long silence she told Namsa, I will not turn you away, but do not mistake this for family. You will work here like everyone else as a cleaner. Nothing more. Her voice was calm, firm and steady. Namsa bowed her head, tears rolling down her cheeks. For the first time she accepted the reality that she had lost the right to call Zanil her daughter. Soon the story spread across the city. People whispered in buses, in markets, in offices. Did you hear? The girl whose stepmother burned her books now employs her as a cleaner. It became a living lesson, a reminder that cruelty never wins, but determination does. Zanil's choice touched hearts everywhere. She had every reason to hate, yet she chose grace. She proved that the greatest victory was not in destroying those who hurt you, but in rising so high that their cruelty no longer mattered. Girls across Africa began to whisper her name like a secret prayer. Zanil, the one who rose from ashes. To them she was more than a lawyer. She was hope itself, a shining light that showed them no fire, no locked door, no cruel voice could ever destroy a burning dream. And in that moment, Zanil's story became bigger than her. It became the story of every girl who dared to rise.